I hope you're all having a wonderful day and welcome back to my channel. I haven't done like an actual Disney related video in a while, so I'm sorry, and that's why I'm doing today's video, because I had some stuff I kind of wanted to talk about. So today we're talking about rude cast members, and before we get started, I try to keep my channel as positive as possible, mainly because I know that a lot of you guys enjoy watching that type of content. It makes you feel good, and there's just so much negativity on YouTube and just in the world in general that I want my channel to be a positive place. So with that in mind, this video isn't going to be like a really negative video. It's more or less just talking about experiences I've had as both a cast member and a guest experiencing rude cast members, and just talking about what might make a cast member appear rude. And even if we think at the end of this video, if we think we have high expectations of cast members because they work for Disney and maybe they're not actually rude, but we just have really high unrealistic expectations. So we're going to be talking about all that today. It's supposed to be a discussion, so please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Just try to be respectful as possible. You can share your stories and your experiences as well, but just try to be mindful that I do want to keep this a positive space. So with all that being said, let's talk about some rude cast members. So this video idea really started recently because I saw something on Twitter. Now this person, it looks like they're like a review Twitter, like they go to different like resorts in the area. It looks like they're based in Orlando and they review things. They posted a video. Well, interestingly enough, I saw the tweet before the video that they posted saying it's hot as balls out here, meaning that they were outside experiencing Animal Kingdom and it was very warm. So I wasn't there. I can't tell you whether or not it was hot or not, but this person on their own said in the tweet before this video that they published that it was really hot outside. So that's one thing. And then they posted this video of a rude cast member they experienced on Kilimanjaro safaris. Basically, it's a 2-minute video where this person is driving and they're not really talking. They're not stopping to see the giraffes walking by, but all we see is this 2-minute video. And it was really interesting for me as a former cast member, reading the responses and seeing people say like, oh my gosh, you should have this person fired. You need to report them to casting. I can't believe this. Like, what if this is the person's only experience going on this ride and they have this horrible experience? You got people just blowing this up. At the same time, there's cast members, both current and former, that are commenting on this post too, trying to say, hey, you know what, you don't really know what this person is going through. Maybe they've had a bad day, maybe it could be really hot outside, which the person who posted the video actually themselves admitted it was hot outside. So it could be really warm outside. They could have gone a long time without a break. We don't really know what this cast member is going through. Plus, like, they don't know that you're videotaping them to blast them on the internet, so like, how fair is that? So I just thought it brought up a really good discussion, and it made me think a lot, and just discussions I've had with people who either were former cast members, current cast members, people who are guests. And I think this is just a really interesting topic because there really is no right or wrong answer in how we define rude cast members. I know from my experience working for Disney, if I tell people I worked for Disney as a cast member, especially on resumes, that looks really good because everyone knows that Disney is such about good quality customer service. And you see this all the time. People have tons of magical moments and magical memories visiting Disney World and Disneyland and all the Disney parks. And I love hearing your guys' stories about amazing experiences you had, especially ones that were made memorable and wonderful because a cast member did something so small, like give your family a fast pass or let you go see a show. One of my favorite memories that I shared in one of my crazy guest experience videos, it was I think the end of video number 3, where I talked about how I met this guest and their family. The guest was really unhappy. He seemed rude to me, and my manager at the time wanted to make this guest feel special. So what we did was we took his daughters around to all these different things, and we just made, on our part it was pretty simple. It wasn't too challenging, but you could tell what a difference it made. So if you guys haven't seen that video, I would go check it out. It's at the very end. It was probably one of my most memorable experiences as a cast member, where I could visibly see the magic we were creating for their family, and that was truly amazing. But in that instance, we didn't really understand why the guest was rude. I mean, he seemed very rude to me. Come to find out later on, his wife had passed away, and that was their first time visiting Disney without their wife, and that was really hard for him. And so he was grumpy because he was really dealing dealing with some personal stuff. So I think a lot of times as a cast member, if I'm experiencing a rude guest, I try to think about the situation that they're in. You know what, they're out in the heat all day long. They've paid a lot of money to be here. They want to do all these different things. Maybe they have experienced other rude guests. Maybe it's the heat. I mean, there's just so much going on that could cause a guest to be just lash out at cast members. So I try to be mindful of that. And I think the same thing goes for cast members. There could be a lot of reasons why they're rude. This video is not to just excuse every single rude cast member. I think there are times like where the people are rude and they shouldn't be. I'll admit that. I'll tell a story later too about a rude cast member that we experienced that I felt like shouldn't have acted the way they did. But maybe just if you're experiencing a rude cast member, like this person who was being silent while they were doing their job, think about like, okay, well maybe it's really stressful to be driving the Kilimanjaro Safari. I mean, they're physically driving the car. They're trying to maintain the safety of the guests. Not only guests, but animals too. Like some of the animals that you see on the safari are dangerous. There's lions, there's alligators, there's hippos, which apparently are very dangerous. So I think there's a lot of stress that goes on with that job, especially if maybe they were dehydrated and it was hot. Like there could be reasons why they weren't super bubbly. Is that a reason to fire someone? I really don't think so. I think you're going to experience that. So going through it, I'm just going to try to explain some reasons why you might experience rude cast members. Again, not to excuse every single rude cast member, but just to make you think next time you're at Disney, especially because the summer months are right here, and I know a lot of you guys are going to go to the parks. The summer I feel like is the hardest time because there's a lot of people there and it's really, really warm, and I just feel like that's never a good recipe, and I think there's a lot of potential for people to be really upset. So, starting off with just different reasons why cast members might be rude. It can be really warm and you could have long shifts. So when I was working as a character attendant, I would get, depending on how long my shift was, I get 2 15-minute breaks, but I was on my feet the whole time. There wasn't really a time where I was like sitting down as a cast member. When I was a character attendant walking around, I could be walking. I mean, I honestly lost like 10 pounds within 3 months because I was just walking all the time. So you are on your feet a lot, which again, I love my job, but it is a job where you're constantly on your feet. And I think people forget too that like at the end of the day, like you are working in the theme park. That's really what it is. Even though it's more glorified than maybe the Six Flags you have near you, it's still a theme park and you get paid as a theme park employee. I think don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure when I worked as a character attendant, I got paid $9.50 an hour. At the same time, it was comparable, I feel like, to the price of living in Florida. I did lose money when I was working for Disney. I did not make more income than I spent, but it was cheaper there for me because I was living in a place where I paid $500 for rent each month, and it was beautiful. I had a pool. It was like a resort apartment. It was gorgeous. But I do remember getting paid $9.50 an hour. I'm pretty sure for a character attendant, and I think I got paid at most either like $11.50 or $12 an hour when I was a character performer. So it wasn't a lot. You're not making a ton of money. And there's a lot of different employees. I mean, first of all, I mean, you're spending a lot of time physically moving around. You could have really long shifts. Because of my job, my shifts weren't that long, but there are jobs at Disney where you could be working long shifts, especially during holiday hours. You can be working up to like 60 hours a week. Like there are people that were working crazy long hours. I didn't experience that in my job because of the time I was there. There was just a lot of different CPs that were character attendants, so I didn't have any crazy long shifts. There was one time though when I was a character performer where I was working till 2 in the morning because they had extra magic hours. So you don't really know like how long this person has been there. Maybe they've had like 6 shifts like back to back, 6 days in a row. They're out in the heat, they're walking around. Like that could be what they're experiencing. Surprisingly, there are some really rude guests. I mean, you don't really understand that until you're a cast member because you won't even understand the depth that people will go to. I've seen multiple accounts from just different people in different locations. They've mentioned like guests physically hitting them. I've heard 2 different stories of 2 different cast members that were pregnant and they were working as like character attendants that got punched in the stomach by guests, like 2 different completely separate accounts. I've heard a surprisingly amount of people, of guests getting physically violent with other guests and with cast members, which is not okay. I feel like in your job, it doesn't matter if you signed up for the job. No one signs up to feel like their space is invaded in a way where they feel unsafe. There were times too that I've experienced as a cast member where guests just got a little too friendly, and I do believe because of the Disney, it's not like a policy, but it's more like that feeling that like the guest is always right and you're always trying to please the guest, which is great. It's great customer service, but I think sometimes too is we forget that these cast members are people, and it's not everyone, but I think you'd be surprised to see how people take it too far. And so I feel like cast members do have a right to feeling safe in their role. Just because they sign up for it doesn't mean that that right is taken away. Another thing too is you don't always know like why a cast member has that job. Yes, there are a lot of people out there that love Disney and that's their dream job to work for Disney. I know it was mine for sure, and I absolutely loved it, and I really truly cherished every single role. Not everyone's in that position. Sometimes people are working there as parents. I met other character performers that were parents and they're providing for their families. I met other people who have been there for decades and years, and you just never know where someone's coming from. Not everyone wants to work there because it's like the happiest place for them to be and they absolutely love it. Like, not everyone loves working there, and I think that's okay. I mean, a job is a job. Even working for Disney, although it was my dream job, there were days where I had really hard shifts. There were days I just really didn't want to go to work. Like, that's totally normal. And I think for us to feel like, oh, well, you're so lucky to have that job. Like, yeah, there's a lot of people that love that job and it's a lot of people's dream job, but at the end of the day, it's still a job. And I think there are days where people aren't going to be super happy and excited to be there. There's going to be people there for different reasons. There are a lot of people there who are younger, who are fresh out of high school or college, and they're really excited to be there. But there's a wide variety of different age groups of people, and some people might be there just as a means to an end. Overall, though, I feel like that does paint a fairly accurate picture as to some stressors that come along with being a cast member. If you guys have any other experiences, either as a cast member or things that you've seen, you can let me know too. But I guess just try to be mindful that these are people too. You don't know what the day they've had. They don't know how many rude guests they've dealt with. So that could explain why maybe they're not like the most perky, happy cast member that you've ever met. At the same time though, I do have a couple of stories that I wanted to share with you guys just from my experience. I mean, there was moments, of course, as a cast member where I was the rude cast member, especially as a character attendant. It's really not fun closing the line, especially when people are so excited to meet characters. So I've noticed that meeting characters is different at Disney World and Disneyland. Disney World I feel like has more structure than Disneyland, but there are very set times as to when you can meet characters. If you guys are curious, you can go on the app and see when you can meet characters. But of course, at the end of the night, the characters don't meet all night long, so there are times where the characters are done meeting, and so as the character attendant, sometimes that was my job to close the line and turn people away. There was a lot of people who were upset because that was their favorite character. One thing that helped me in that instance, even though I felt like I was upsetting people, is just to remember like, okay, well, if I turn, you know, this person away, I can't just let one extra random person come in if I'm already turning other people away, because that's not fair to the other guests. But it was hard. It was hard to turn people away, and I know people weren't happy about it. There was another instance too where my coworker from a different job after I worked at Disney had visited Disneyland, and she hadn't either, had been a while since she'd been there, or she hadn't been there before. And so in her defense, she didn't really understand how it works, how if you want to see parades and shows and fireworks, you do have to make sure that you set some time aside to find a spot to watch those shows, because it is a popular thing to do, and you can't really just expect to just watch it as it's happening and just jump in and see it from like the perfect spot. Like there are people who wait for parades and shows and fireworks, especially during the busy times, like a good half an hour to an hour beforehand. Like that's pretty normal actually. So unfortunately for guests who are newer, they might not know that, and that might be challenging for them because they may want to see the fireworks but not understand the time commitment that they have to like kind of carve out time to make sure that they have a good spot for it. So my coworker really wanted to see the fireworks, but her kids were there too, so she was doing stuff for the kids. And so the fireworks show started. She didn't know what was going to happen, so she started to walk and just stopped in the sidewalk. Well, there are, I think it's Parade Audience Control cast members, they call them PAC, P-A-C. Their job is to keep people moving because for safety reasons. I think just from experiences that I've heard that that is probably one of the hardest jobs to have as a cast member, because guests, for whatever reason, get the most upset during parades and fireworks shows. They just get really nasty to each other, to cast members. Like, people get really upset. Maybe it's just because they've been sitting there for a long time. I don't know, but people just get crazy during those experiences. And I've heard I've seen too, just how people can treat those types of cast members, and it's just really horrifying sometimes. So she was really upset because this person she felt like was being rude to her as a cast member and telling her to keep moving and that she couldn't stand there, and she was very put off and was telling me about how this person ruined her trip and how she was really upset. But then I took the time to explain to her. I said, well, you know, there's a lot of people that are trying to do what you're doing, and they can't have that because they need to keep the walkways clear. So even though she's not taking the time to be like, you know, like we really have to do this and that, like she has to tell so many people to keep moving. She doesn't have the time to make it like really personalized and like explain that, which is unfortunate, but that's why you see them just say keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. It's because there's a lot of people that they have to tell that to. So I tried to explain to her that that was where that person was coming from. I know in her mind, she still thinks that person was being rude, but I can see the other side being a cast member and being like, oh my gosh, that is such a not fun job because there are so many rude people and that just doesn't seem like a fun job. I'm sure there's perks to it, but there can be some really rude guests in that situation. Another situation that I experienced, I was actually moving to Florida to start my time as a DCP cast member. I hadn't moved in yet. I was with my family and we were visiting some of the parks. We hadn't been to Disney World in a while, so it was really fun. We were leaving Animal Kingdom and we were at a light and it turned green. We hadn't gone yet and the person behind us completely rear-ended us. So we tried to have them pull over. It was a cast member. She was really upset. There were some words exchanged. I think people, both my family and her were upset about the situation. As she was leaving and driving off, she flipped us off. Do I feel like she handled herself the best? No, she was still wearing her cast member uniform. She had her name badge on, so I don't know. She could have been having a really bad day. It was really unfortunate that this happened. She was not the friendliest in that situation, but at the same time, like, you do represent the company, especially when you're still in a work costume, even if you're not on work. But would I have thought differently if she wasn't wearing that, if I didn't think she was a cast member? Probably, but do I have this standard of how cast members should act because Disney is so well known for providing excellent customer service that if someone's acting like the smallest amount of rude or unhappy or unkind, like I just blow it out of proportions in my head? I think so too, but that was an unfortunate situation. It didn't happen while she was on the clock. Wasn't really happy about her flipping us off. But that was another rude cast member experience that I had. So those are just a couple to illustrate, at least I can think off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other ones too. There's been times I've experienced as a former cast member, but as a guest, just seeing like cast members like not really give their all and not going above and beyond, especially like I feel like I'm honestly a little more critical of character attendants after being a character attendant and just knowing what they should and shouldn't do. So when people aren't like doing their best job as being an attendant, I'm like, oh, it's too bad. But at the same time, like, it does take a lot of energy. So all this to say, I think especially as we get into like the hot and busy season for visiting the parks, there are a lot of reasons why people can be rude. And again, this is not to excuse rude cast members, but just to have us just kind of think about like, well, are they actually being rude or are they just doing their job? And do I not like it because it prevents me from doing what I want to do? And I think a lot of times that is a situation. One time I had a conversation with a cast member. I don't remember who it was. They had been there for a while. They were an older cast member. And they told me something that really changed the way I thought about this. And they said that as time goes on and prices increase every year for visiting the parks, and guests, it's harder and harder for them to afford a family vacation to these places, they're going to expect better and better and better service to equal the amount that they're paying for. So let's just say you could buy a ticket back in the day for like, what I'm sure is true, like $50 to get into the parks. Well, now it's like outrageous. It could be like $100, $180, like the prices have increased a lot. And they use that mainly because of like crowd control and value, and the prices, I'm sure they have a way for figuring out how to price the parks. But it's not as reasonable for a family to just spend like $1,000 on a trip. They could be spending thousands and thousands of dollars just for this experience. And so I think it's natural for them to want to have a better experience than they had last time. And what the service that they had last time for just like $1,000 shouldn't be the same service that they would expect for like a $5,000 vacation. So if that makes sense, like as the prices increase and they're paying more for their experience, their expectations of what that experience should look like also increase. So I think people are quicker to get upset over things because they know how much they're paying and they want to have an amazing experience. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I've experienced I mean, I have experienced a lot of people like getting upset because they're out in the heat a lot, there's crowds. I think we all have experienced that within our own families, our own trips with our friends, or just seeing other guests as well as a cast member. So I think that's really the root of the problem, is just because it's just getting more crowded. It's still really crowded, and you're paying a lot of money to be in this crowded place, and it's hot, and I think it makes sense why guests are rude. In turn, they're rude to cast members. That makes cast members unhappy, and so I think that's why we're seeing more and more unhappy people at the parks, is because the prices are increasing and they feel like there's higher expectations for what their trip should look like because they're paying more for it. So let me know what you guys think. That's just kind of my interpretation on rude cast members. Do you actually think that they're being rude? Can you think of examples that you've had with rude cast members and think about, okay, were they actually being rude? Do I actually want this person fired because they were being silent for 2 minutes while they were doing their job? No, like, I don't know. I guess just think about that and think about it more from like the human aspect, and think about, okay, this is a person who might be just using this job as a means to an end to help pay for food for their family. And think, okay, are they actually being rude? But do I just have really high expectations of what a cast member should look like because Disney is so well known for providing amazing customer service? I don't think there's any wrong or right answers. I just thought it might be something nice to mention, just because I feel like I don't know, I just feel like after being a cast member, my perspective on it has changed, and I am able to give a little bit more grace and really appreciate cast members for what they do. There's a lot of you guys that go out of your way to appreciate cast members, and that is so nice. There are a lot of jobs that are really thankless, and so I think next time you go to the parks, just be extra nice to the cast members and thank them for doing a good job and appreciate them, because honestly, it doesn't happen enough. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!